So I don't know why people don't believe me when I tell them that I was born and raised in Texas. And I don't know why my parents thought it would be a good idea to move there from their homeland of Punjab to raise four brown skinned, beard loving, turban wearing boys. But they did. And we actually had a great childhood there. Tons of friends, neighbors, classmates, sports. We loved our sports all the time: basketball, soccer, football. That was our life. And of course, there were some challenges too. The first vivid memory I have of dealing with racism was at my older brother's fifth grade class party. We walked into the roller skating rink, and immediately the manager walked over to my mother and said, "Those boys can't skate here." And we sort of rolled our eyes. We'd been through this before, and our mom was handling it, so we walked over to the arcade. And after about 10 minutes, she was still there, and I went to go check on her. I walked up to her behind the counter, tugged on her shirt, and she turned around and she was bawling. And I'd never seen her cry before. And so I just did what a fourth grader would do. I started crying as well. And she touched me on the shoulder and she said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "The same reason as you. It's not fair. They should let us skate." And she said, "Oh, I'm crying for a different reason. I'm happy." And I, "What? You're happy?" She said, "We're so lucky to have such good friends. Everyone here has agreed to walk out and protest because they're not letting you skate." And that for me, who was this woman? Who can, in a moment where anyone else would feel defeated, helpless, where their kids are being discriminated against, and they're finding optimism in that moment? Where does that come from, and how do I get some of that? That evening, we sat at the dinner table together as a family, just like every night, and my father repeated to us some lessons that he had said to us previously. He said, "You can't always control how people treat you, but you can always control how you respond." He said, "Always do the right thing, no matter how hard it is or what the consequences might be." And that was a refrain in our household. And that is a lesson I think many minorities in this country carry with them. When you look different, when you look like this, you are aware, you are hyper-conscious that every action you take in public reflects on your entire community. You are always an ambassador, you are always representing. And I understand why some people feel like that's a burden. Some people think that's unfair, and I think it is. Why should anyone, let alone a 5-year-old, have to carry the entire weight of their community on their shoulders? But growing up, I never actually felt like it was a burden. I never felt like it was unfair. I actually relished that. I felt like there was a power in it. I felt like I had the ability to shape people's perceptions of entire groups just by being me, just by being a good person. So I loved this opportunity. I was all about it. And then, like a lot of things after 9/11, that feeling changed. My whole world shattered. A violent backlash swept around the country, targeting Muslims primarily. But the way things work, as we know, is things don't just affect one community. Racism happens. Muslims were racialized, and my community, the Sikh community, became perceived as the enemy because of how we look. I was well aware that my appearance fit to a T the stereotype of the enemy in this country. And if I ever forgot that, someone made sure to remind me that on the street. And that feeling, I felt like that power that I used to have of controlling people's perceptions, I felt stripped of that power, and I felt helpless. In those moments, I started to work with the communities affected by anti-Muslim hate, for healing, for helping. I worked as a scholar doing research. I worked as a racial justice activist. I worked as a civil rights advocate. And I made the most remarkable observation. Consistently, every time I encountered or found an instance in which a Sikh had been targeted in hate, For some reason, somehow, the Sikhs always had the ability to respond with their values, with resilience, with integrity. In the wake of anti-Muslim hate, it would have been easy for Sikhs to say, you got the wrong people, get those guys instead. But instead of doing that consistently, Sikhs decided to stand in solidarity with those who were being marginalized. And in doing so, put themselves in harm's way. And why did they do that? Because of what my father taught me as a child. Always do the right thing, no matter how hard it is or what the consequences might be. But there was another question that I felt burning, and it was the same question that I had at the roller skating that day. Where does that come from, and how do I get some of that? The most compelling answer I've found so far comes from the French philosopher Michel Foucault, who has a concept called technologies of the self. He says that humans engage in ritual practice in part as a way to cultivate the ability to do the right thing when things get tough. There is a way that we can constantly practice doing the right thing, and in doing so, really produce a more ethical being within ourselves. We can really produce integrity and resilience. And the way we do that is through a constant disciplining. That is how we create fortitude. And Sikhs, because of their unique appearance, are in a position in this country where they are constantly pushed to respond with their values, to deal with integrity, to deal with resilience. And so this, I think, is a very incredibly powerful response that I've learned from the Sikh community. In 2012, when a white supremacist entered a Sikh place of worship in Wisconsin, he massacred the Sikh congregation there. It was one of the worst attacks of violence in a place of worship in American history. And the community did not respond with vengeance or anger or hate. They leaned right into their values of love and service and justice. And they did this because they had been practicing this every single day of their lives, so that when push came to shove, they were ready to do what they thought was right. And so this is something we can all learn from the Sikh community. That there is a way that we can become better as individuals and as a society by really doing two very simple things. One, identifying what our values are. What is the type of person we want to be in this world? And two, practicing those values every single day, so that every day we are leaning in to what we believe, into who we want to be, and producing our most ethical selves. That is how we cultivate resilience. That is how we cultivate integrity. And this is something we can all do. And in doing so, this is what we can do to make our society a better place. Thank you.